The billionaire stood in the hospital doorway, staring at the son he never knew existed. 6 years old, fighting for his life. Machines surrounded the small body like mechanical guardians, their steady beeping the only proof that the child still clung to existence. The boy's face was pale against the white sheets, dark hair falling across a forehead that looked exactly like his own childhood photographs. The same strong jaw, the same stubborn chin, the same everything. Stellan Moreau had built an empire worth billions. He had crushed competitors without blinking. He had survived boardroom coups, hostile takeovers, and family betrayals that would have destroyed lesser men. But nothing in his 34 years of existence had prepared him for this moment. Nothing had prepared him for the gut punch of seeing his own features reflected in a dying child's face. And the woman who had hidden this child from him? She was sitting right there in the corner of that hospital room, her eyes red from crying, her body thin from months of fighting a losing battle against her own mortality. She was asking him to save what she had stolen. She was begging him to protect the secret she had kept for nearly 7 years. The audacity should have made him furious. The betrayal should have made him walk away. But Stellan could not move. He could not breathe. He could not do anything except stare at the small hand resting on the hospital blanket and wonder how his entire world had just shifted on its axis. The monitors continued their rhythmic beeping. The ventilator continued its mechanical breathing. And somewhere between one heartbeat and the next, Stellan Moreau realized that everything he thought he knew about his past was a lie. The woman in the corner finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "His name is Caspian," she said, "and he is yours." Have you ever loved someone so much that your fear of losing them made you do something unforgivable? Have you ever held something precious in your hands and felt so terrified of breaking it that you crushed it yourself, just to control when the pain would come? Have you ever run from something because staying felt like drowning? Think about it for a moment. Really think about it. That moment when your heart was racing and your mind was screaming and every instinct in your body told you to flee. That moment when the person you loved most in the world became the person you feared most. Not because they were cruel, not because they were dangerous, but because they had the power to destroy you simply by existing. Have you ever looked at your choices years later and wondered if you were the hero of your story or the villain? Because the line between those two things is thinner than we like to admit. We tell ourselves we made the right decision. We tell ourselves we had no other choice. We tell ourselves that the people we hurt would have been hurt worse if we had stayed. We build entire narratives around our escape, casting ourselves as the brave survivors rather than the cowardly deserters. But late at night, when the darkness is absolute and the silence is deafening, we know the truth. We know that sometimes love is not enough. We know that sometimes fear wins. We know that sometimes the person we become in our worst moments is not someone we can ever fully forgive. Sarin Castwell knew all of this intimately. She had loved a man with every fiber of her being, and that love had terrified her so completely that she had run from it. She had discovered she was carrying his child, and instead of telling him, she had disappeared. She had built an entire life on the foundation of a lie, convincing herself that she was protecting her son, when really she was protecting herself. And now, 7 years later, she was dying. The cancer had spread too far. The treatments had failed too completely. And the son she had tried so desperately to protect was about to lose the only parent he had ever known. Her choices were coming home to roost. Her secrets were demanding their payment. And the bill was more than she could ever afford to pay. Sarin Castwell had 14 days. 14 days to find someone willing to take permanent custody of her son, or the foster care system would swallow him whole. 14 days to navigate a legal maze that seemed designed to trap her at every turn. 14 days to ensure that her child, her everything, her reason for breathing, would not become another statistic in a broken system. The social worker had explained it all with clinical detachment. Doreen Albright was a woman who had clearly seen too much tragedy to feel it anymore. She had sat across from Sarin with a thick file folder and a list of requirements that read like an impossible puzzle. She had explained that without a living family member or a designated guardian with financial stability and suitable living arrangements, Caspian would enter the foster care system upon Sarin's death. The words had hung in the hospital room like a death sentence of their own. Foster care, group homes, strange beds and strange faces, and the constant shuffling from place to place. Sarin had grown up in that system. She knew exactly what it meant. She knew the loneliness that seeped into your bones and never fully left. She knew the way you learned to never get attached because attachment only led to pain. She knew the statistics about children who aged out of the system, the cycles of poverty and incarceration and hopelessness that swallowed them whole. She would not let that happen to her son. She could not let that happen to her son. But the only person who qualified to take custody was the man she had betrayed 7 years ago. The father who did not know his son existed. The billionaire who had every reason to destroy her. Stellan Moreau was not just wealthy. He was powerful in ways that made powerful people nervous. His family name opened doors that remained permanently closed to ordinary people. His resources could provide Caspian with opportunities Sarin could never have dreamed of giving him. But Stellan Moreau also had every reason to hate her. She had vanished without explanation. She had let him believe she was dead. She had stolen years of his son's life and hidden them away like contraband, never once considering that he might have a right to know. What would a man like that do when he discovered the truth? Would he fight for custody out of love or out of vengeance? Would he welcome Caspian into his world or use the child as a weapon against the woman who had wronged him? Would he protect their son or destroy him simply to prove that he could? Sarin did not know, and she was running out of time to find out. The power imbalance between them was staggering. She was a dying woman with nothing left to lose and everything to fear. He was a billionaire with endless resources and a grudge that had festered for 7 years. If she approached him wrong, if she misjudged his reaction, she could lose Caspian forever. But if she did not approach him at all, she would definitely lose Caspian forever. 14 days. The clock was already ticking. What happens when the secrets we keep to protect the people we love become the very thing that destroys them? What happens when the walls we build for safety become the prisons that trap us? What happens when the only path forward leads directly through the wreckage of everything we have spent years running from? These are the questions that will define this story. Because Sarin Castwell is about to discover that the truth she buried 7 years ago did not stay buried. It grew, it festered, it wrapped its roots around everything she thought she knew and prepared to tear it all down. And Stellan Moreau is about to discover that the woman who shattered his heart was not the villain he spent years believing her to be. She was something far more complicated, far more tragic, far more bound to the dark secrets of his own family than he ever imagined possible. Stay with me until the end, because this story will take you through betrayal that cuts to the bone. It will reveal billion-dollar family secrets that have been buried for generations. It will expose a conspiracy that reaches into the highest levels of power and the darkest corners of human ambition. And at its center, burning like a flame that refuses to be extinguished, is a love that refuses to die. No matter how hard 2 broken people tried to kill it, no matter how many lies were told to smother it, no matter how much pain was inflicted to make it stop. Some loves are like that, you know. They sink their roots so deep into your soul that removing them would kill you. They become part of your cellular structure, woven into the very fabric of who you are. You can run from them. You can deny them. You can spend years pretending they never existed. But they wait, patient and eternal. They wait for the moment when the walls finally crumble and the truth finally emerges, and 2 people who were always meant to find each other are forced to face what they really are, what they really feel, what they really want. This is that moment. This is that story. If you are new here, welcome to a story that will stay with you long after it ends. This tale of betrayal, redemption, and impossible love is just beginning, and I want you with me for every twist and turn. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you never miss what happens next. And if you are returning, thank you. Truly, thank you for being part of this experience. Drop a comment below and tell me something. Have you ever run from something you should have stayed to fight for? Have you ever made a choice in fear that you spent years regretting? I read every single comment, and I genuinely want to hear your story. Sometimes, the most powerful connections happen in the comments section, when strangers realize they are not so different after all. Now, let us go back to the beginning. 7 years before that hospital room, 7 years before the dying child, and the desperate mother, and the billionaire who did not know he was a father. Back to a broken elevator in a Manhattan skyscraper. Back to a chance meeting between two people who had no business being in the same orbit. Back to a connection so immediate and so intense that it felt less like meeting someone new and more like recognizing someone your soul had been searching for your entire life. Back to a love that was never supposed to happen, and the tragedy that destroyed it. The fluorescent lights in the hospital corridor buzzed with a frequency that seemed designed to drive human beings slowly insane. Sarin had been sitting in this plastic chair for 6 hours. Her back ached. Her legs had gone numb somewhere around hour 3. Her hands would not stop trembling no matter how tightly she clasped them together in her lap. The hospital smelled like industrial disinfectant and despair. Like every hope that had ever walked through these doors had been scrubbed away along with the germs, leaving nothing but the sterile emptiness of waiting, always waiting, waiting for test results, waiting for doctors, waiting for the universe to decide whether her son would live or die. 7 years of running, 7 years of looking over her shoulder, 7 years of building a life on a foundation of lies, convincing herself that she was doing the right thing, that she was protecting her child from a world that would swallow him whole. And now here she was, sitting in a plastic chair in a hospital corridor, watching that carefully constructed life crumble around her like a house of cards in a hurricane. The social worker appeared at the end of the hallway, her sensible shoes clicking against the linoleum with a rhythm that sounded like a countdown. Doreen Albright was a woman in her late 50s, with grey hair pulled back in a severe bun, and eyes that had seen too much tragedy to feel it anymore. She carried a thick manila folder under her arm, and Sarin knew with absolute certainty that nothing good was written on those pages. Ms. Castwell. Doreen sat down in the plastic chair beside her, the folder resting on her lap like a weapon. We need to discuss your son's situation. His situation is that he is in the ICU fighting for his life. Sarin's voice came out sharper than she intended. His situation is that I should be in there with him, not out here filling out paperwork. Doreen's expression did not change. She had clearly heard worse. I understand this is difficult, but the court requires documentation of guardianship plans given your circumstances. Your circumstances. Such a clinical way to describe the cancer that was eating her from the inside out. Such a sterile phrase for the death sentence she had been handed 3 months ago. Such a neat, professional summary of the fact that she was dying and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. I have 14 days, Doreen continued, opening the folder. 14 days to submit a viable guardianship plan to the court, or your son will enter the foster care system upon your passing. The words hit Sarin like a physical blow. Foster care. She knew that system. She had grown up in that system. She knew the loneliness and the fear, and the way you learn to never get attached, because attachment only led to pain. She knew the statistics about children who aged out without families, the cycles they fell into, the futures that were stolen from them before they even had a chance to dream. No. The word came out as a whisper. He cannot wake up surrounded by strangers. He cannot open his eyes in that hospital bed and see faces he does not recognize. I am his mother. I am right here. Doreen's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Then you need to find someone, a family member with financial stability, a designated guardian who can pass background checks and provide suitable living arrangements, someone the court will approve. I do not have anyone. Sarin's voice cracked. I do not have family. I do not have anyone who qualifies. The boy's father. Doreen glanced at the folder. The birth certificate lists the father as unknown. Is that accurate? Sarin's blood ran cold. The father, the real danger, the man she had spent 7 years hiding from, the man whose face she saw every time she looked at her son, the man who had the power to give Caspian everything she never could, or destroy them both with a single phone call. Ms. Castwell? Doreen was watching her closely now. Is the father truly unknown, or is that information you chose not to provide? Sarin pressed her palm against the glass of the ICU window, watching her son's small chest rise and fall with the mechanical rhythm of the ventilator. Dark curls spilled across the white pillow. His face was pale, so pale, but peaceful in a way that made her heart ache. He looked exactly like his father. Everyone who saw them together said so. The same strong jaw, the same stubborn chin, the same eyes that seemed to look right through you and see everything you were trying to hide. 14 days. 14 days to face the man she had betrayed. 14 days to beg him to save the son she had stolen. "I know who the father is," Sarin finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I have always known." 7 years earlier, Sarin Castwell was 23 years old and drowning. Not literally, though some days it felt close enough. She was drowning in $50,000 of student loan debt, drowning in a junior content writer position that paid barely enough to cover her studio apartment's rent, drowning in the gap between where she had thought her journalism degree would take her and where she had actually ended up. She had graduated top of her class. She had interned at prestigious publications. She had done everything right, followed every rule, checked every box. And still, here she was, writing clickbait headlines about celebrity diets and viral pet videos while her dreams of becoming a serious journalist gathered dust in the back of her mind. The elevator in the Madison Everett building was supposed to be her only interaction with the building's wealthy inhabitants. She worked in the basement content farm, a windowless office where underpaid writers churned out articles for various online platforms owned by a media conglomerate she had never even heard of before taking the job. The elevator was supposed to take 30 seconds. It was not supposed to break down between the 42nd and 43rd floors. It was definitely not supposed to trap her for 3 hours with the man whose face was currently plastered across every business magazine in the country. Stellan Moreau was 31 years old, and he had been named to Forbes 30 Under 30 3 times in a row. He had built a tech empire from nothing, disrupting industries and making enemies and accumulating wealth at a pace that made financial analysts nervous. He was the kind of man who commanded rooms simply by entering them, who moved through the world with the easy confidence of someone who had never been told no. He was also the kind of man who should not have been trapped in a broken elevator with a junior content writer who had mustard on her sleeve from lunch. Sarin had recognized him immediately. Everyone would have recognized him. His face was everywhere, but she was too tired and too frustrated to be impressed. She had a deadline in 2 hours, and no cell service, and a broken elevator that the building maintenance team seemed in no hurry to fix. "This is ridiculous," she muttered, jabbing the emergency button for the 5th time. "How does a building like this not have functioning emergency protocols?" The man in the expensive suit said nothing. He was leaning against the opposite wall, arms crossed, watching her with an expression she could not read. "What?" Sarin snapped, turning to face him. "You have something to add? Some brilliant solution your money can buy?" The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. "I was just wondering why you are not nervous." "Nervous?" Sarin laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I am stuck in a metal box with no cell service, missing a deadline that will probably get me fired, and my student loan payment is due in 3 days. What is there to be nervous about?" He blinked. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. A real laugh, the kind that transformed his entire face and made him look suddenly, startlingly human. "You have no idea who I am, do you?" "I know exactly who you are." Sarin crossed her arms, mirroring his posture. "You are Stellan Moreau, tech billionaire, media darling, professional disruptor of whatever industry you feel like disrupting this week. Your net worth is somewhere in the neighborhood of ridiculous, and you probably own this building, or at least enough of it to get this elevator fixed faster than the rest of us." He stared at her for a long moment. "And yet, you are not impressed." "Should I be?" Sarin raised an eyebrow. "You are stuck in the same broken elevator I am. Your money cannot fix this any faster than my lack of money can. For the next however many hours, we are exactly the same. 2 people waiting for someone else to solve our problems." Something shifted in his expression. Something softened. "You looked at me like I was just a person," he said quietly, almost to himself. "What else would you be?" His jaw tightened. I stopped being just a person a long time ago. They talked for 3 hours, not about business or money or the empire he had built. They talked about books, about music, about the strange loneliness of being surrounded by people who wanted things from you rather than simply wanted you. He told her about his twin sister, lost to leukemia when they were 14. The way her death had created a void inside him that success could never fill. The way he had spent 2 decades running from that emptiness, building walls of wealth and power, trying to become someone his sister would have been proud of while simultaneously becoming someone she would not have recognized. Sarin listened, really listened, the way she had learned to listen as a journalist, but without the agenda, without the angle, just one human being present for another human being's pain. When the elevator finally lurched back to life, Stellan pulled out a business card. But instead of handing it to her, he took out a pen and wrote something on the back. "Have dinner with me." That is not a question. It was not meant to be. His eyes met hers. Please. That one word, please, changed everything. This was not a command from a billionaire accustomed to getting what he wanted. This was a request from a man who had just revealed more of himself to a stranger in a broken elevator than he had probably revealed to anyone in years. 2 days later, a package arrived at her apartment. Inside was a first edition copy of The Sun Also Rises, her favorite book, the one she had mentioned casually during their conversation, the one she had said she dreamed of owning someday, but could never afford. Inside the front cover was a handwritten note in careful, elegant script. "Because you looked at me like I was just a person. Thank you for 3 hours of being human again." Sarin held the book against her chest and felt something dangerous begin to bloom inside her. Something that felt terrifyingly like falling. Their relationship existed in secret spaces. Penthouse apartments with views of the city skyline. Private jets that whisked them to anonymous beaches where no one knew their faces. Hotels registered under fake names where the staff had been paid handsomely to forget they had ever been there. Stellan had explained it carefully in those early weeks. The media was relentless. His family was complicated. His world was full of people who would weaponize anything they could find. If they went public, Sarin's life would become a circus. Photographers outside her apartment. Tabloids digging through her past. Business rivals using her as leverage against him. He was protecting her. That was what he said. And Sarin believed him because she wanted to believe him. Because the alternative was too painful to consider. Because when he looked at her with those eyes that seemed to see straight through her defenses, she forgot how to question anything. The moments of tenderness were what undid her. The way he remembered every small detail she mentioned and turned it into a gift. The way he held her face in his hands like she was something precious. The way he whispered her name in the dark, like it was the only word that mattered in any language. One night, lying tangled together in his penthouse with the city glittering beneath them, he said something that carved itself into her heart. "I have never wanted to keep someone before." Sarin propped herself up on her elbow, looking down at his face in the moonlight. "Keep someone?" "Close, safe, mine." He reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I do not know the rules for this. I have never played this game before." "There are no rules," she told him, and she meant it. Love does not come with an instruction manual. But something flickered in his expression, something that should have warned her. "There are always rules," he said quietly. "You just have not learned mine yet." She did not understand what he meant. Not then. Not until it was too late. In those early months, she was too drunk on the feeling of being chosen, too intoxicated by the way he made her feel special, singular, necessary. She had spent her whole life being invisible, being overlooked, being the girl who worked hard and followed the rules and never quite got what she deserved. And now here was this man who had everything, who could have anyone, and he wanted her, just her. The secrets felt romantic rather than restrictive. The hiding felt protective rather than controlling. The way he kept her separate from every other part of his life felt like safety rather than isolation. She did not see the cage being built around her, not until the door had already closed. She discovered she was pregnant on a Thursday. The stick turned positive in the bathroom of her studio apartment, the one she had kept even though she spent most nights at his penthouse. She had kept it because some part of her knew, some instinct she had buried deep understood that you should never give up your escape route, no matter how safe you felt. She told him on Sunday. 3 days of carrying this secret alone. 3 days of imagining his reaction. 3 days of convincing herself that everything would be fine because he loved her and love conquered all. She was so young, so naive, so desperately wrong. They were at his estate on Lake Washington. Floor-to-ceiling windows that made you feel like you were floating above the water. A house so beautiful it looked like it belonged in an architecture magazine rather than the real world. Sarin had chosen her words carefully, rehearsed them in the mirror, practiced the delivery until it felt natural. But the moment the words left her mouth, everything she had rehearsed fell apart. I am pregnant. 2 words. Simple, direct, life-altering. Stellan's face went completely blank. Not surprised, not happy, not angry, just blank. Like someone had reached inside him and turned off every emotion at once. Like the man she loved had been replaced by a statue wearing his face. The silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. Finally, he spoke. Have you considered your options? Sarin felt the words hit her like a slap. My options? There are clinics, discreet ones. I can make arrangements. Are you asking me to terminate this pregnancy? He turned away, walking toward the windows. His back was to her now, his reflection ghostly against the darkening sky. I'm asking you to consider what this means. My family has expectations. There are inheritance protocols, legal implications. If this becomes public, there will be consequences neither of us can control. Consequences. Sarin's voice had gone cold. Our child is a consequence now. That is not what I said. Then what are you saying, Stellan? Because from where I am standing, it sounds like you want me to make this disappear, so your life remains uncomplicated. He spun around, and for the first time, she saw the fear beneath the mask. Real fear. The kind that lives in your bones and never fully leaves. My world destroys people. His voice cracked on the words. It takes everything good and twists it into something unrecognizable. My family, my legacy, everything I was born into, it consumes whatever it touches. And our child. Would it consume our child too? I do not know how to love anything without destroying it. The confession seemed to cost him everything. Everyone I have ever cared about has paid the price for being close to me. My sister, my mother, everyone. Sarin stared at him, and in that moment, she understood something devastating. He was not saying he did not want their child. He was saying he did not know how to survive caring about one, and somehow, that was worse. Because she could fight against rejection, she could rage against coldness. But how do you fight against a man's certainty that his love is a curse? How do you convince someone that they are capable of more than destruction when they have spent their entire life believing otherwise? She made her decision in that moment. Standing in that beautiful house, watching the man she loved crumble under the weight of his own fear, she decided she would not let her child become another casualty of the Moreau legacy. She would not watch her baby grow up in a world that consumed everything it touched. She would run, and she would never look back. Pause for a moment. Put yourself in Sarin's shoes. The man you love just implied that your child is a complication. He is not cruel about it. He is not cold. He is terrified in a way that makes your heart ache for him even as it breaks for yourself. Do you stay and fight? Do you try to convince him that his fears are unfounded, that your love is strong enough to overcome his demons? Or do you run to protect what you are carrying inside you? Do you decide that some battles cannot be won, that some people cannot be saved, and that your first responsibility is to the life growing beneath your heart? Drop your answer in the comments. Tell me what you would have done. I want to know, because I think there are no easy answers here. I think reasonable people can look at this situation and come to completely different conclusions. And that is what makes this story so painful. Because Sarin made her choice, and she has been living with the consequences ever since. 3 weeks after the test came back positive, Everything fit into the back of a 13-year-old Honda Civic. Clothes, books. The ultrasound photo she couldn't stop looking at, even though all she could see was static and the technician's promise that yes, there was something there, something real. Seattle disappeared in the rearview mirror at 4:47 a.m., the skyline swallowed by fog. The name change came first. Legal documents signed in a strip mall office in Spokane, Sarin Castwell. Her grandmother's maiden name, borrowed like a coat that didn't quite fit but would keep her warm enough. Montana was chosen for its anonymity. Small hospital. No questions asked beyond what the intake forms required. She paid in cash she'd been saving since she was 16. Money her mother left her with a note that said, "For emergencies only." If this wasn't an emergency, nothing was. The birth happened on a Tuesday in March. Snow against the windows. A nurse with kind hands who didn't comment on the fact that no one came to visit, that no one waited in the hallway pacing and anxious. When they placed the baby in her arms, wrinkled and furious and impossibly small, the nurse asked the question she'd been dreading. What about the father? The lie came easier than she expected. He died. Before I found out. The nurse's face softened with practiced sympathy, and just like that, the story became real. Your father died before you were born. She would tell it so many times over the next 7 years that sometimes she almost believed it herself. The nights were the hardest. Caspian, she'd named him after a sea she'd never seen, a place vast enough to contain all her hope and terror, would sleep in the bassinet beside her bed, and she would lie awake in the dark, watching his chest rise and fall. Was I the villain of this story? The question circled like a bird of prey. She had taken someone's child from them. She had made a choice on behalf of 2 people without asking either of them what they wanted. But then she would remember the look on his face when she told him, the silence that stretched too long, the fear she saw before he locked it away behind that practiced calm. I can't do this. He hadn't said it, but she'd heard it anyway, in every breath he didn't take, in every word he didn't offer. 7 years compressed into a sequence of identical rooms in different cities. Boise, Missoula, Coeur d'Alene. Always small towns. Always places where no one asked too many questions, where a single mother working 2 jobs was common enough to be invisible. Phone numbers changed like seasons. Social media accounts deleted and remade under false names, then deleted again when paranoia won. She was always looking over her shoulder. At the grocery store, scanning faces for one she'd know anywhere. At Caspian's preschool, her heart stopping every time a tall man in an expensive coat walked past. At night, jolting awake at sounds that were only wind, only neighbors, only her own fear made audible. She told herself it was worth it. Caspian was healthy, happy. He collected rocks and talked to birds and told her he loved her, all the way to the other side of space, which was his way of saying more than anything. He didn't know what he was missing. And that, she told herself on the nights when doubt pressed against her chest like a weight, was protection. But loneliness has a way of clarifying things, and sometimes, in the darkest hours, she wondered if she'd protected him at all, or just taught him that the people who love you leave, just like her father had taught her. The hospital cafeteria, at 2 a.m., smelled like burnt coffee and industrial disinfectant. Sarin sat alone at a table near the windows, staring at her phone like it might detonate. Ramona's voice still echoed in her head, sharp and uncompromising. You have to call him. There's no other option. There's always another option. Not this time. Not with what's at stake. Doreen Albright. The court summons. The 14-day deadline that felt like a noose tightening with every hour that passed. Her finger hovered over his name in her contacts. She'd never deleted it. 7 years, 4 phones, countless fresh starts, and she'd never deleted it. The number sat there like a gravestone, marking something dead that refused to stay buried. She pressed call before she could stop herself. It rang 3 times, long enough for her to consider hanging up. Long enough for panic to claw its way up her throat. Then his voice, rougher than she remembered, deeper, like something had scraped it raw. Who is this? Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. I said, who is this? It's me. Silence. Then, so quiet she almost didn't hear it. Sarin? The way he said her name like a wound reopening made her eyes burn. I need to tell you something. I've spent 7 years making sure I'd know the moment you surfaced. His voice was cold now, controlled. The second you used a credit card, applied for a job, signed a lease, I had people watching, waiting. Her blood went cold. That's insane, obsessive. A bitter laugh. Yeah, I'm aware. Why? What? You know why. Dad! She did. God help her. She did. I have a son, she said, and the words felt like stones dropping into deep water. He's 7. His name is Caspian. Silence. Long enough that she checked to see if the call had dropped. Then, what did you say? None. Your son. Our son. He was in a car accident 2 days ago. He's stable, but there are complications and... Where are you? Portland, Mercy General. But you need to understand. I'm in Seattle. I can be there in 3 hours. Wait. You were supposed to stay. The words hit like a slap. What? When you told me, his voice cracked. You were supposed to stay. You were supposed to fight. That's what people do when they love someone. They stay and they fight and they figure it out together. Like you fought for us? The anger came from nowhere, hot and sudden. Like you fought when I told you I was pregnant, and you looked at me like I'd just announced the end of the world. Was scared. So was I. I was terrified. But I didn't have the luxury of shutting down because there was a person growing inside me who needed me to figure it out. You didn't give me a chance. You didn't ask for one. Silence again, sharp, edged and bitter. Then, quieter. You meant everything to me. I know, she whispered. That's why I left. She heard him breathe, slow and deliberate, like he was trying to keep from breaking apart. Tell me exactly where you are. I'm coming. He doesn't know about you. I told him you were dead. Another silence, longer this time. We'll fix it. Whatever it takes, we'll fix it. Just, his voice broke. Tell me where you are. She gave him the address. The call ended, and Sarin sat alone in the fluorescent glow of the cafeteria, staring at her reflection in the black window, wondering if she'd just saved her son or doomed them both. 6 hours passed like surgery without anesthesia. Sarin sat in the chair beside the hospital bed, holding Caspian's hand, the one without the 4, and memorized his face for the 1000th time, the slope of his nose, the way his eyelashes cast shadows on his cheeks, the small scar above his eyebrow from when he fell off the swing set in Missoula and she'd carried him 6 blocks to urgent care because her car wouldn't start. Every part of him was mapped in her memory. Every freckle, every breath. She'd been alone with him for 7 years. In 3 hours, that would end. I'm sorry, she whispered to his sleeping face. I'm sorry I didn't tell you the truth. I thought I was protecting you, but maybe I was just protecting myself. The machines beeped their steady rhythm. His chest rose and fell. Your father is coming. Her voice caught. He's not what I told you. He's alive. And he's going to want to know you, and I don't know if that's the best thing or the worst thing, but I don't have a choice anymore. Liar, a voice in her head whispered. You always had a choice. You just didn't like the options. The air changed before she heard footsteps. Charged, heavy, electric. She knew he was there before she turned around. Stellan stood in the doorway, and for a moment, neither of them moved. He looked different, older. The boyish edges she remembered had been carved away, leaving something harder and more defined. His hair was shorter, his jaw sharper. He wore a coat that probably cost more than her car, and underneath the composed exterior she could see the truth. He was barely holding himself together. His eyes found Caspian, and something in his face just broke. He looks like my sister, he said, voice raw. when she was in the hospital, at the end. Sarin's throat tightened. She'd forgotten about Elara, the twin who died at 14, the ghost he never talked about but carried everywhere. "I'm sorry," she said, because what else was there? He crossed the room in 3 strides, stopped at the foot of the bed, gripped the railing so hard his knuckles went white. "Tell me everything." So she did. The accident, the drunk driver who ran the red light, the 72 hours of observation, the custody threat from Doreen Albright, who smelled blood in the water and came circling with legal documents and family court petitions. He listened without interrupting, his face a mask except for his hands, which trembled against the metal rail. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then, "You should have called me the moment you found out you were pregnant." "I know. Not now. 7 years ago. I know. You couldn't trust me." Not a question, a statement of fact, delivered with surgical precision. "No," she admitted. "I couldn't." His jaw worked. "And now?" "Now I don't have a choice." "That's not the same thing." "No," she agreed. "It's not." He looked at Caspian again, and his expression softened into something she'd never seen before. Grief and wonder tangled together, inseparable. "He has your eyes," he said quietly. "And your nose." "Does he—" He stopped, started again. "What's he like?" So she told him. About the rocks, the birds, the way he talked to strangers like they were old friends and cried when he saw roadkill because something loved them and now they're gone. About his fear of the dark and his love of maps, and the way he said, "I love you all the way to the other side of space." Like it was a measurement of distance instead of feeling. Stellan listened, and with every detail his face grew more stricken. "I missed everything," he said. "Yes, you took everything from me. Yes, I should hate you. I know, but I can't." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and his eyes were wet, "because hating you means hating the choice that gave me him, and I can't do that." She understood. God help her. She understood. "Fight," he said, and it sounded like a vow. That's what people do when they love someone. They stay, and they fight, and they figure it out together. "I'm trying." "Try harder." He turned back to Caspian. "Because I'm not losing him. Not to that woman, not to the court, not to anyone. Do you understand?" "Yes." "Good." He pulled a chair to the other side of the bed, sat down like he was settling in for a siege. "Then let's get started." At 7:42 a.m., Caspian opened his eyes. "Mummy?" Sarin was on her feet instantly, leaning over the bed rail, smoothing his hair back from his forehead. "I'm here, baby. I'm right here." His gaze drifted past her, landed on the man sleeping in the chair across from them, head tilted back, mouth slightly open, one hand hanging loose at his side. "Who's that?" Sarin's heart stopped. She'd rehearsed this moment in her head 100 times since the phone call, had prepared speeches, explanations, carefully constructed truths that wouldn't shatter him. All of them evaporated. He's someone who came to help you get better. Caspian studied him with the unnerving focus children have, the kind that sees through lies like glass. "The man is crying," he observed. Sarin looked. Stellan's face was still, but there were tear tracks on his cheeks, silver in the early light. "Sometimes," she said carefully, "grown-ups cry when they're worried about people they care about." "Does he care about me?" "Yes." "How come I don't know him?" Before she could answer, Stellan's eyes opened. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then he sat up slowly, wiped his face with the back of his hand, and managed something that almost looked like a smile. "Hi," he said, voice rough from sleep. Caspian stared at him. "Hi. He glanced at Sarin, a question in his eyes. She gave the smallest shake of her head. "I'm a friend of your mother's. My name is Stellan." "That's a weird name." A startled laugh escaped him. "Yeah, I guess it is. I'm Caspian." "I know." Something raw crossed his face. "I've heard a lot about you." "Like what?" "Like you collect rocks. And you talk to birds. How did you know that? Your mom told me. Caspian processed this, then asked the question Sarin had been dreading. Are you going to help me get better? Stellan's hands curled into fists against his knees. When he spoke, his voice was steady, but only just. I'm going to do everything I can. Okay. Simple as that. The absolute trust of a child who hadn't learned yet that adults lie. Will you be here when I wake up? As long as you need me. What if I need you for a really long time? This time, Stellan couldn't stop the tears. Then I'll be here for a really long time. Caspian smiled, small and tired but real, and closed his eyes again. Within minutes, he was asleep. Stellan sat frozen, staring at his son's face like he was afraid blinking would make him disappear. Sarin watched him watch Caspian and felt something shift in her chest. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but maybe the beginning of understanding. The first lawyer arrived at 11 a.m., then 3 more. By noon, the hospital corridor outside Caspian's room looked like the waiting area of a corporate law firm. Sarin stood near the nurse's station, watching Stellan on his phone, pacing with controlled precision, his voice low and cold, and completely devoid of the emotion she'd seen 2 hours ago. This was a different person. This was the billionaire. I don't care what you have to move. Cancel it. A pause. Then reschedule. I'm not asking. Another pause, shorter. Effective immediately. I want emergency paternity testing expedited through whatever channels necessary. Money is not a constraint. Time is. He ended the call. Made another. Ramsey, I need the custody team mobilized. Portland, Oregon. Mercy General Hospital. DUI case, false charges, vindictive family services caseworker named Doreen Albright. He spelled it. I want everything on her. Everything. If she's ever gotten a parking ticket, I want to know about it. Sarin felt something cold settle in her stomach. This was the man the world knew, the one I had run from, not because he was cruel, but because when he focused that kind of power, that kind of will, it was like standing in the path of an avalanche. You either got out of the way or got buried. She'd chosen to run. Now she watched him weaponize everything she'd feared, and the worst part was the relief. He was terrifying, but he was on their side. Doreen Albright returned at 2 p.m., flanked by her own attorney. She stopped short when she saw the fleet of suits outside Caspian's room. Stellan stepped forward, extending his hand with perfect poisonous courtesy. Miss Albright, I'm Stellan Moreau. I believe we have some things to discuss. The color drained from her face. She knew the name. Everyone knew the name. Mr. Moreau, this is highly irregular. Irregular would be filing custody motions against a woman who was demonstrably not impaired based on a police report that has since been amended. His smile was a knife edge. That's not irregular. That's potentially actionable. Her lawyer stepped forward. My client was acting in the best interests of the child. Your client, Stellan interrupted, voice dropping to something dangerous, was acting in the best interests of her case statistics and promotion prospects. Let's not insult each other's intelligence. Sarin watched from the periphery, forgotten in the power play unfolding in front of her. This was what she'd been afraid of. Not that he wouldn't care, that he would care too much, and the force of that caring would crush everything in its path, including her. By 5 p.m., the paternity test was ordered and expedited. By 6 p.m., Doreen Albright's office had received formal notice that any further action would be met with legal consequences that would end careers. By 7 p.m., Stellan's legal team had filed emergency motions of their own, and somewhere in the middle of it all, Sarin realized she was no longer in control of anything. She'd spent 7 years making every decision, calling every shot, steering the ship alone. Now someone else had their hands on the wheel, and she didn't know whether to feel relieved or terrified, maybe both. At 9 p.m., when the lawyers finally dispersed and the corridor went quiet, Stellan sat down in the chair beside her. He looked exhausted. Thank you, she said quietly. Don't, I mean it. Don't thank me for protecting my son. He rubbed his face. I'm not doing this for you. I know. He looked at her then, and something in his expression made her chest ache. My family can't know about this. She blinked. What? My legal team is personal, private. No one from the family firm. No one connected to Moreau Industries. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. If they find out about Caspian, they won't let go. Do you understand? No, she admitted. I don't. You will. He stood, and when you do, you'll understand why you were right to run. He walked back into Caspian's room, leaving her alone in the hallway, trying to decode a warning that sounded like a confession. Days blurred together in the fluorescent haze of hospital time. Stellan barely left. Sarin watched him cancel meetings via terse phone calls, ignore emails that his assistant marked as urgent, and wave away concerns about quarterly reports like they were irrelevant noise. Nothing mattered, except the boy in the bed. She watched him learn Caspian in real time. The way he startled awake if a bird landed on the windowsill, how he refused to eat green things unless you called them forest food and pretended they had magic powers. The ritual of goodnight, 3 pats on the head, 2 on the shoulder, 1 on the hand, always in that order, or he'd make you start over. Why birds? Stellan asked one afternoon, when Caspian was drawing pictures of crows on the back of a get well card. Because they can go anywhere, Caspian said, like it was obvious. They don't have to stay in one place if they don't want to. Something flickered across Stellan's face. He glanced at Sarin, and she looked away. Children say things they don't understand. Truth delivered in innocence, sharp as glass. On the 4th day, Caspian asked about the rocks. Where's my collection? The special ones. Sarin's heart sank. Baby, they're back at the apartment. I couldn't bring them to the hospital. His face crumpled. Not a tantrum. Worse. The quiet disappointment of a child who'd lost something irreplaceable. I wanted to show them to Stellan. I know, I'm sorry. It's okay. But his voice said it wasn't. Stellan stood abruptly. What do they look like? Caspian brightened a little. There's a blue one that's really flat, and a sparkly one I found by the river, and a white one with black spots that looks like an egg. I'll be back. He was gone before Sarin could ask where he was going. 3 hours later, he returned with a box. Not Caspian's collection. He'd had no way to get that, but something else entirely. Polished stones from a specialty shop, rough chunks of quartz and amethyst. A geode cracked open to reveal glittering purple inside. Smooth river rocks in shades of grey and cream. He set the box on the hospital tray table. Caspian's eyes went wide. You got me rocks? I got you rocks. Stellan sat down, suddenly uncertain. I know they're not your special ones, but I thought maybe we could start a new collection. Together. Caspian reached into the box, pulled out the geode, turned it over in his small hands. This one's my favorite. Yeah? Yeah. It looks normal on the outside, but inside it's full of treasure. Stellan's throat worked. That's a good way to think about it. Can we look for rocks together when I get out of here? Anywhere you want. Even by the ocean? Especially by the ocean. Caspian grinned, and Stellan smiled back, and Sarin felt something crack open in her chest. That night, after Caspian fell asleep, Stellan read to him some picture book about a bear and a mountain that one of the nurses had donated from the pediatric library. His voice was soft, almost uncertain, like he was learning a language he'd never spoken. Sarin watched from her chair, arms wrapped around herself. I watched the man I thought couldn't love learn to love in real time, and I didn't know whether to celebrate or grieve, because every moment of connection between them was a moment that proved her wrong, proved that maybe she'd stolen something that should never have been taken, proved that running had cost all 3 of them something they'd never get back. When Stellan noticed she was awake, he closed the book carefully. He asked me today if I was going to stay forever, he said quietly. What did you tell him? That I was going to try. He set the book aside. What did you tell him about me? Before? That you died before he was born. He flinched. Clean break. I thought it was kinder than the truth. Which was? That I didn't trust you not to break his heart. She met his eyes. Or mine. Would I have? He asked, if you'd stayed, would I have broken your heart? I don't know. Maybe. Probably. She looked at Caspian, sleeping peaceful between them. But I didn't give you the chance to prove me wrong. No, he agreed. You didn't. The silence stretched. Not comfortable, but not hostile either. Just two people learning to exist in the same space again, trying to build something new on top of wreckage they'd both caused. The call came at midnight. Sarin was half asleep in the reclining chair when Stellan's phone lit up the darkness. He stepped into the hallway, but she could hear his voice through the door. Cold, careful, wrong. When he came back 15 minutes later, his face was pale. What's wrong? Nothing. Don't lie to me. He sat down heavily, scrubbed his hands over his face. That was my uncle, Victor Moreau. The name meant nothing to her, but the way he said it meant everything. How does he know you're here? Because I've been gone for 5 days without explanation, and the Moreau family doesn't accept mysteries. His jaw tightened. He knows about Caspian. Ice flooded her veins. How? I don't know. Someone talked. Someone always talks. He looked at her, and there was fear under the anger. He wants to meet him. Absolutely not. I told him no. A bitter laugh. He told me it wasn't a request. You're a grown man. Tell him to. You don't understand. He leaned forward, elbows on knees. The Moreau family we're not normal. The money, the name, it all comes with conditions, obligations, debts that get paid in ways that have nothing to do with currency. I don't understand. No, you don't. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, my sister didn't just die, Sarin. She was kept from treatment that could have saved her. The words landed like stones in still water. What? Elara had leukemia, 14 years old, and there was an experimental treatment, clinical trial, 80% success rate. His voice went flat. My father refused to allow it. Why would? Because the trial required disclosure, medical histories, genetic testing, and my father had spent 20 years building the Moreau pharmaceutical empire on drug trials that weren't exactly. He stopped, started over. The foundations were rotten. If anyone looked too close, if anyone started asking questions, everything would collapse. Sarin felt sick, so he let her die. He made a choice, legacy over love, empire over family. Stellan's hands curled into fists, and my uncle Victor was right there beside him, making sure no one asked the wrong questions. My God. I've spent my entire adult life trying to build something clean on top of something poisoned, trying to make the name mean something other than what my father made it mean. He looked at her, and now Victor knows about Caspian, which means he'll want to know if he's useful. Useful? Heir, leverage, asset. Each word was spat like poison. My family doesn't see people. They see pieces on a board. Understanding crashed over her like a wave. That's why you were afraid when I told you I was pregnant. Yes. I thought I'd turn into my father. I thought I'd have to choose between protecting a child and protecting myself, and I didn't know which one I'd pick. His voice broke. Elara used to tell me I was different, that I'd never be like him, and then you told me you were pregnant, and all I could think was, what if she was wrong? Sarin's throat burned. All this time, she'd thought he was afraid of fatherhood. He'd been afraid of becoming a monster. If my family gets involved in Caspian's custody, Stellan said quietly, they won't let go. They'll own him, and I've seen what they do with the things they own. Then we don't let them. You don't understand what you're up against. Then explain it to me. He looked at Caspian, sleeping innocent and small, unaware of the shadow creeping toward him. They'll smile and offer support. They'll send lawyers and money and resources, and then slowly they'll take everything that matters until all that's left is the name, the legacy, the lie. Not if we fight them. You can't fight them, Sarin. You did, she interrupted. You fought them. You built something different. You can do it again. That was before I had something they wanted. Then we protect what they want. She leaned forward, together, like we should have from the beginning. He stared at her, and for the first time since he'd arrived, she saw something other than fear or anger. She saw hope, fragile, tentative, barely there, but real. Okay, he said finally. Okay. The court order came on day 6. Emergency custody granted to Stellan Moreau, pending completion of rehabilitation program and formal custody hearing. Sarin had known it was coming, had agreed to it even. But seeing it in writing, seeing her son's name on legal documents that stripped away her rights, felt like drowning. 30 days, the social worker said. Different one this time. Kinder. Inpatient program. You complete that, stay clean, and the court will reevaluate. And if I don't? The woman's face was sympathetic. Let's focus on what happens if you do. Saying goodbye was the hardest thing she'd ever done. Harder than leaving Seattle 7 years ago. Harder than labor. Harder than every lonely night in every anonymous town. Caspian was being discharged the next day, cleared to leave the hospital, strong enough to go home. Except home was now Stellan's house. Not the small apartment with the leaky faucet and the neighbor who played music too loud. I have to go away for a little while, she told him, sitting on the edge of the hospital bed, holding his hands. Where? To a place where I can get help, so I can be the best mom possible. His face crumpled. Because of the accident? No, baby. The accident wasn't your fault. This is about me making sure I'm healthy, for you. How long? 30 days. That's a really long time. I know, her voice cracked. But Stellan is going to be with you the whole time, and I'll call you every day. I promise. You're coming back, right? The fear in his voice nearly destroyed her. Nothing could keep me away. Promise? I promise. All the way to the other side of space. He threw his arms around her neck, and she held him like he was the only thing keeping her anchored to Earth. Maybe he was. Stellan found her in the hallway after, sitting on the floor with her back against the wall, crying too hard to stand. He didn't say anything, just slid down beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered. You can. How do you know? Because you spent 7 years protecting him alone. 30 days with help should be easy in comparison. That's not how it works. I know. He was quiet for a moment. Then, I'll protect him, whatever it takes. That's what I was trying to do. I know that too. She looked at him, really looked, and saw the truth in his face. He wasn't doing this to punish her. He was doing it because there was no other choice. They'd both made mistakes, both run from fear instead of toward each other. But maybe it wasn't too late to stop running. Thank you, she said. Don't thank me yet. We don't know how this ends. No, she agreed. But at least we're trying. The next morning, she left, walked down the hospital corridor with a small bag and Ramona's hand on her shoulder. She didn't look back, not because she didn't want to, but because if she did, she'd never leave. And Caspian deserved a mother who was whole, even if getting whole meant breaking first. I had spent 7 years protecting Caspian from his father. Now, I was trusting that same man to protect him from everything else, including me. The irony wasn't lost on me. Neither was the terror. But I walked forward anyway, because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is surrender. Caspian was discharged at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. Stellan carried him to the car, not because he couldn't walk, but because he asked, and Stellan didn't know how to say no. The drive to Portland's West Hills took 20 minutes. 20 minutes of Caspian pressed against the window, watching the city rise and fall, asking questions Stellan barely knew how to answer. Do you live in a big house? Yeah, it's pretty big. How big? Oh, big enough. Big enough for what? Stellan glanced in the rearview mirror, saw his son's face, curious, open, trusting, and felt something twist in his chest. I don't know yet, he admitted. I guess we'll find out. The house sat behind gates and hedges, glass and stone rising from manicured lawns like something out of a magazine. Caspian went very still when the car stopped. You live here? Yeah. By yourself? The question landed heavier than it should have. Yeah. Why do you have so many rooms if you live alone? Stellan turned off the engine, had no answer that wouldn't sound hollow. Because I built walls instead of a home. Because I filled space instead of loneliness. Because I didn't know what else to do with money that couldn't buy what I actually wanted. I don't know, he said finally. That's a good question. Inside was worse. Everything pristine, everything expensive, everything cold. A housekeeper named Marie greeted them at the door, kind, faced and efficient, already briefed on the situation. She'd prepared a room on the second floor. Neutral colors, new bedding, a bookshelf waiting to be filled. Caspian stood in the doorway, clutching his small bag. This is mine? If you want it to be. It's really big. Too big? I don't know. He stepped inside, set the bag down carefully. Mom and I usually share a room, in case I have bad dreams. Stellan's throat tightened. You can still do that, if you want. My room is down the hall. You can come in whenever. Really? Really? Caspian nodded slowly, processing. Then he unzipped his bag, pulled out the box of rocks from the hospital. Can I put these somewhere? Anywhere you want. He carried them to the window, arranged them on the sill with careful precision. The geode in the center, the river stones flanking it, the quartz catching light. There, he said, satisfied. Now it's better. And somehow, impossibly, it was. The first few days were an education in improvisation. Stellan knew mergers and acquisitions, hostile takeovers, market manipulation, balance sheets. He didn't know bedtimes or food preferences or the specific ritual required before leaving the house, shoes on right foot first, always, or the day would go wrong. He learned. Marie helped, taught him which cereals were acceptable, only the ones with animals on the box, and how to cut sandwiches, diagonal, never straight, and that bath time required exactly 3 rubber ducks, no more, no less. He's very particular, Marie observed one evening, after Caspian had rejected dinner because the carrots touched the potatoes. Is that normal? For a 7-year-old who's been through trauma? Absolutely. She smiled gently. He's looking for control where he can find it. Give him time. Time? The thing Stellan had always treated like currency, suddenly precious in a completely different way. At night, Caspian had terrors. Not every night, but enough. He'd wake screaming, tangled in sheets, trapped in the moment of impact he couldn't quite remember but couldn't escape. The first time it happened, Stellan didn't know what to do. He stood in the doorway, paralyzed, while Caspian sobbed into his pillow. Then instinct took over. He crossed the room, sat on the edge of the bed, gathered his son into his arms. You're safe. You're here. You're okay. I want Mom. I know you do. Where is she? She's getting help so she can come back stronger. What if she doesn't come back? The fear in his voice was a knife. She will. She promised. And your mom doesn't break promises. It wasn't entirely true. She'd broken the biggest promise imaginable by disappearing. But it was true enough for a frightened child in the dark. Caspian buried his face in Stellan's shoulder, small body shaking. And Stellan held him, this person he'd only known for days who'd somehow become the center of his entire world, and made promises of his own. I'll keep you safe. I'll be here. I'll figure this out. I won't be my father. 2 weeks in, something shifted. Caspian started leaving his room without being called, started asking Stellan questions about work, about the city, about nothing in particular, started trusting. One evening, Stellan was working at his desk, laptop open, files scattered, when Caspian appeared in the doorway. "Can I show you something?" "Of course." He came closer, held out a smooth black stone. "I found this in the garden. Marie said it was okay to keep it." Stellan took it, felt the weight and warmth. "It's perfect." "I was thinking," he hesitated, "maybe we could make a shelf for the collection, so it has a special place." Something in Stellan's chest cracked open. Yeah, we could do that." "Really?" "Really. We could go to the hardware store this weekend, pick out wood, build it together." Caspian's face lit up. "You know how to build things?" "No," Stellan admitted, "but I'm pretty good at figuring things out." "Mom says that too." "Does she?" "Yeah. She says we can figure out anything if we try hard enough." Stellan smiled, felt the sting of tears he didn't let fall. "Your mom is pretty smart." "I know." Caspian set the rock carefully on the desk, next to Stellan's keyboard. "You can keep this one, for your desk, so you don't forget." "Forget what?" "That you promised to help me get better." He looked up, eyes serious. "You said you'd be here as long as I needed you." "I did." "Do you still mean it?" "Yes." "What if I need you for a really, really long time?" Stellan's vision blurred. "Then I'll be here for a really, really long time." Caspian nodded, satisfied, and walked back toward the door. Paused on the threshold. "Stellan?" "Yeah?" "I'm glad you're here." He was gone before Stellan could respond, which was probably good, because Stellan couldn't speak past the lump in his throat anyway. Being a father, I discovered, wasn't about having answers. It was about staying in the room when you didn't. It was about learning which foot the shoe went on first. It was about holding someone through nightmares and building shelves for rocks and keeping promises you didn't know how to keep. It was terrifying. It was everything. The letter arrived on a Thursday. Thick envelope. Expensive paper. The Moreau family crest embossed in silver. Stellan knew what it was before he opened it. He waited until Caspian was asleep, then sat in his study with a glass of whiskey he didn't drink, and read words that felt like a noose tightening. Moreau, family trust, notice of genetic verification requirement, claim of patrilineal descent, Caspian Castwell, mandatory integration protocols, legal language wrapped around a simple threat. Prove he's ours, then give him to us. Stellan's hands shook as he read the signature at the bottom. Victor Moreau, Trust Administrator. His phone rang 30 seconds later. He answered without checking the caller ID. "Already knew. You received the documents." Victor's voice, smooth as oil over gravel. "I did." "Then you understand the situation." "I understand you're overstepping." A dry laugh. "Family assets are subject to family oversight, Stellan. You know this. Your father established these protocols for exactly this reason. Caspian is not an asset. He's a Moreau. That makes him subject to the trust provisions. Genetic verification through our approved facilities, integration into estate planning, appropriate education and social preparation. He's 7 years old. Which is why we begin now." A pause. "I've arranged testing for next week, Tuesday, 10 a.m., our facility in Seattle. I trust you'll comply." "And if I don't?" "Then we'll have a problem." The warmth drained from Victor's voice. "You've built a lovely little empire of your own, nephew. Clean money, legitimate enterprises, a reputation for integrity that your father never had." Another pause, deliberate. "It would be unfortunate if questions arose about how you seeded that empire, about which family accounts you borrowed from, about whether you've truly separated yourself from the old sins or just buried them better." Ice flooded Stellan's veins. "You wouldn't." "I would prefer not to, but family comes first, always." Victor's voice softened into something worse than anger, affection. "Bring the boy to Seattle. Let us meet our nephew's son. Let us welcome him properly. This doesn't have to be adversarial." "Everything with you is adversarial." Only when people resist what's best for them. A sigh. Tuesday, Stellan. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. The line went dead. Stellan sat in the silence of his study, surrounded by everything he'd built, and felt it all turn to sand. He'd spent 15 years trying to escape the Moreau legacy, building something clean from dirty money, trying to prove you could be born into poison and still grow into something else. And now they had leverage, not just the truth about where his fortunes started, but something infinitely more valuable. They had Caspian, or they would, if he gave them access. His phone rang again, different number this time. Sarin, her daily call from the facility, their 10-minute window. He answered, tried to keep his voice steady. Hey, hey. She sounded tired. How is he? Good, really good. We're building a shelf this weekend. A shelf? For his rocks. Despite everything, he smiled. He has opinions about wood grain. Her laugh was soft, sad. Of course he does. Silence stretched between them. Then, something's wrong. I can hear it. He shouldn't tell her. She had enough to deal with, but the weight was crushing, and she was the only person who'd understand. My uncle knows about Caspian. They want him tested, verified, integrated into the family. Her sharp intake of breath was answer enough. What are you going to do? I don't know. Stellan, they have leverage. Things I did when I was younger, when I was trying to get free, things that would destroy everything I've built. His voice cracked. And they'll use it. Victor will burn it all down if I don't comply. Then we fight them. You don't understand what you're up against. Then help me understand, because I'm not losing my son to people who killed their own daughter for money. He'd told her about Ilara. Late night in the hospital, guards down, grief spilling out like blood from a wound that never healed. Now she was throwing it back at him, and he couldn't even be angry because she was right. Someone told them, he said quietly. Someone close, someone who knew. Who? I don't know, but there's a leak, and until I find it, I can't trust anyone. You can trust me. Could he? She'd spent 7 years running, 7 years lying, 7 years proving that when things got hard, she disappeared. But she'd also come back, called him, asked for help, and now she was offering to fight beside him. Tuesday, he said. They want us in Seattle. I have until then to figure out what to do. We have until then, she corrected. We're in this together now, remember? Yeah, he said softly. I remember. Too. After they hung up, he sat in the dark, trying to find a path forward that didn't end in ruins. Outside his study, in a room down the hall, his son slept. Inside his chest, something ancient and frightened whispered the same question his father must have asked. How far would you go to protect what's yours? And for the first time in his life, Stellan understood how good men became monsters. Because the answer was, as far as necessary. The facility smelled like industrial cleaner and desperation. Sarin sat in a circle of plastic chairs, surrounded by people with stories that mirrored hers in all the ways that mattered. Different details, same destruction. I told myself I was protecting him, she said, because it was her turn to share, and silence would mean forfeiting progress. That's what I kept saying. I'm protecting my son. From what? The therapist asked, Dr. Keating, mid to 50s, patient eyes, a voice that didn't judge but didn't let you hide either. From his father's fear. From a family that destroys what it touches. From... She stopped. Started over. From repeating my childhood. What? Tell us about your childhood. The words came hard, dredged up from places she'd buried deep. My father left when I was 6, just gone one day. My mother said he went to find work in another state that he'd send for us when he got settled. Her laugh was bitter. I believed her for 3 years, kept a bag packed, ready to go when he called. He never called. No. Turns out he had another family. A better one, I guess. One he actually wanted. And your mother? Drank herself to death by the time I was 16. Sarin's hands twisted in her lap, slowly, methodically, like it was a job she was committed to finishing. So you learned that people leave. I learned that people who say they love you, leave. The distinction felt important, and I learned that waiting for them to come back is a waste of time. Dr. Keating leaned forward slightly. Is that what you were afraid Stellan would do? Leave? I was afraid he'd stay long enough for Caspian to love him, and then leave, because that's worse. Her voice broke. It's worse to know what you're missing. So you left first? Yes. You controlled the abandonment. The words hit like a fist. She couldn't breathe. I didn't abandon him. I protected him. From what? Specifically. From being disappointed, from being hurt, from the pain you experienced. Yes. Did it work? Sarin stared at her, fury rising. What? Did running protect Caspian from pain, or did it just give him a different kind? The room swam. You taught him that his father was dead, that death is easier to explain than fear. You moved him every year, taught him not to form attachments because attachments mean vulnerability. Doctor, Keating's voice was gentle, but relentless. You gave him your wounds, just in a different shape. I was trying. I know, but trying isn't the same as succeeding, and protection isn't the same as love. Something inside her shattered. I didn't know what else to do. I believe you. Doctor, Keating sat back. But now you do. So what are you going to do differently? That night, alone in the sparse room that smelled like bleach and regret, Sarin wrote 2 letters. The first was to Caspian. Dear baby, I'm writing this even though I don't know if I'll ever give it to you. Maybe when you're older, maybe never. Maybe I just need to say these things out loud, even if it's only on paper. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I lied about your father. I'm sorry I kept moving us around like we were running from something, because we were. But the thing we were running from was inside me, not outside. I was afraid. Afraid of being left like my father left me. Afraid of watching you love someone who would disappoint you. Afraid of repeating every mistake my mother made. But I made my own mistakes instead. I took your father from you before you could even know him. I taught you that love means leaving. I made you pack and unpack your life so many times that you learned not to put down roots. I thought I was protecting you. I was protecting myself. And I'm so sorry. You deserved better. You deserved the truth. You deserved 2 parents who were brave enough to figure it out together, even when it was scary. I'm going to try to be that person now, the brave one, the one who stays. I don't know if I can do it, but I'm going to try. I love you all the way to the other side of space. Mom, the second letter was harder. Stellan. Sen. I don't know how to start this, so I'm just going to say it. You were right. That night when you said I should have stayed and fought, you were right. I should have told you I was pregnant, and then stood there while you freaked out and said the wrong things, and maybe eventually said the right things. I should have given you the chance to rise to the occasion instead of assuming you'd fail. I didn't trust you. But worse, I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust that I could survive being left again. So I left first. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't think I deserve it. But I need you to know that I see it now. What I did, what it cost. It cost you 7 years with your son. It cost Caspian a father who would have loved him. It cost all 3 of us the chance to be a family, whatever that would have looked like. I can't give you those years back. I can only promise you this. I'm done running. Whatever happens next, with your family, with the custody case, with us, I'm staying. I'm fighting, even if I'm scared. Especially if I'm scared, because you were right about something else too. That's what people do when they love someone. I don't know if you can ever forgive me. I don't know if we can fix this. But I'm going to try. Sarin. She folded both letters, tucked them away, and lay in the dark trying to believe her own words. Outside, rain drummed against windows. Inside, something old and frightened began, finally, to let go. I had told myself I was protecting Caspian from his father's fear. But maybe I was just running from my own. Maybe protection and cowardice looked the same from certain angles. Maybe the bravest thing I could do was admit I'd been wrong and try to do better. Starting now, Stellan didn't sleep. Instead, he did what he always did when the world felt like it was collapsing. He worked. At 2 a.m., surrounded by financial records and legal documents spread across his study floor, he started tracing the money. Not his money, his father's. The Moreau fortune had always been presented as pharmaceutical innovation, patents, and research. Legitimate empire built on legitimate science. But Stellan had spent 15 years with a suspicion lodged in his gut like a splinter. Now he went digging for the infection. The first irregularity appeared in trial data from 1998, a leukemia drug, promising results. FDA approval fast-tracked. Except the trial cohort numbers didn't match the published data. Off by just enough to matter, buried deep enough that no one had looked. He pulled more files. 1999, 2001, 2003. The pattern emerged like a photograph developing in acid. Falsified data, cherry-picked results. Test subjects whose adverse reactions disappeared from official reports like they'd never existed. His father hadn't just bent the rules. He'd built an empire on lies that killed people. And Alara? Stellan's hands shook as he found the medical records he'd inherited after his father's death. Records he'd never had the stomach to fully examine. Patient, Alara Moreau, age 14A. Diagnosis, acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Recommended treatment, experimental protocol BH-7, 80% remission rate in early trials. Family decision, treatment declined, reason, redacted. But there was a note attached, handwritten. His father's script, cannot risk exposure. Protocol requires genetic screening that would reveal trial inconsistencies. Foundation more important than individual case. Difficult, but necessary. Foundation. The word sat on the page like a tombstone. Stellan read it 3 times, 4, 5, until the letters stopped meaning anything and became just shapes. His father had let Alara die, not because the treatment didn't exist, not because medicine failed, because saving her would have exposed the fraud, would have brought the empire down. So he made a choice, legacy over love. Stellan's phone rang at 3:47 a.m. He answered without thinking. "You're up late." Victor's voice, smooth and knowing, or early, depending on perspective. "How did you?" "I have alerts on the family servers. When someone accesses certain files, I'm notified." A pause. "You found your father's records." Stellan's blood ran cold. "You knew." "Of course I knew. I helped him make the decision." Victor's tone was almost gentle. "Stellan, your father was a great man. He built something that outlasted him, something that will outlast all of us. But great things require sacrifice." She was 14. She was one person. The foundation has saved thousands, tens of thousands. The calculus isn't complicated. "The calculus," Stellan couldn't breathe. "You're talking about my sister. I'm talking about legacy. Your father understood that. Eventually, you will too." A beat, especially now that you have a son. The threat was clear. "If you think I'm going to let you anywhere near Caspian, you don't have a choice. The trust provisions are ironclad. He's family, which means he's subject to family oversight." Victor's voice hardened. "Bring him to Seattle on Tuesday, or I'll bring Seattle to you. And when I do, I'll bring questions. About where you got the seed money for your first acquisition, about which family accounts you accessed, about whether the apple really did fall far from the tree, or if you're just better at hiding the rot. You'll destroy yourself too." "Will I? I'm an old man, Stellan. What do I care about reputation at this point?" A dry laugh. "But you've built everything on the idea that you're different, better, clean. How long does that last when people learn the truth?" Stellan's grip on the phone tightened until his knuckles went white. "What do you want?" I want the family to continue. I want your son integrated properly. I want the Moreau name to mean something 100 years from now. A pause. And I want you to understand that sacrifices are made for legacy. You'll understand when you have more at stake. He's 7 years old. Then we have plenty of time to prepare him. Victor's voice softened into something worse than anger, genuine affection. He's a Moreau, Stellan. That's not a curse. It's a calling. Let us help him become what he's meant to be. And if I refuse? Then you'll lose everything. Your company, your reputation, your son. The warmth vanished. Courts don't look kindly on men who build fortunes on embezzled family money. And they certainly don't grant custody to criminals. The line went dead. Stellan sat in the wreckage of his study, surrounded by evidence of crimes he couldn't expose without destroying himself. His father had let Elara die to protect the lie. Now Victor was betting Stellan would sacrifice Caspian's freedom to protect his own. How far would you go to protect what's yours? He finally understood the question, and the answer terrified him. I had spent my life believing my sister died because medicine failed her. She died because family failed her, because legacy mattered more than love. And now I was facing the same choice. Protect my son's future, or protect my own. Give him to the family that would own him, or lose him to a system that would take him anyway. There had to be another option. There had to be, because if there wasn't, then I was exactly what I'd always feared becoming. My father's son, Victor Moreau, arrived in Portland on Monday morning. No warning, no courtesy call, just a text at 9 a.m. I'm at your gate. We need to talk. Stellan met him in the driveway, made sure Marie had taken Caspian to the park, made sure his son was nowhere near this conversation. Victor emerged from a black town car, tall and silver, haired, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. He looked like power, old money, untouchable authority. He smiled when he saw Stellan. Nephew, you look terrible. What are you doing here? I told you, we need to talk. He glanced at the house. Lovely place, very you, clean lines, no history. His smile sharpened. May I come in? No. Pity. Victor clasped his hands behind his back. Then we'll talk out here. I came to make you an offer. I'm not interested. You haven't heard it yet. I don't need to. Oh, Victor sighed, the patient sound of a man used to winning. Bring Caspian to the family estate. Let us meet him properly. Integrate him into the trust structure. Give him access to education and opportunities you can't provide alone. He paused. Do that, and the questions about your seed capital disappear. Your reputation stays intact. You get to keep playing the reformed Moreau. And what does Caspian get? Everything. The full weight of the family resources, the best schools, the right connections, a future that matters. He's 7, which is why we start now. Victor's eyes glinted. Your father waited too long with you. Let you develop ideas about independence, about being different. Look where that got you, scrambling to protect secrets, terrified of exposure, alone in a big house with no one who understands the burden you carry. The words landed like knives. I'm not alone. I have a son. For now. Victor's tone shifted, colder. But custody is a fragile thing, Stellan, especially for men with questionable pasts and mothers with addiction problems. He pulled a folder from his coat. I have Sarin's rehabilitation records, medical history, every mistake she's ever made, documented and ready for court. You can't. Those are sealed. Money unseals many things. He held out the folder. Imagine what a judge would think. Unstable mother, father with criminal financial history, and here's the Moreau family, offering stability and resources and a proper upbringing. Stellan didn't take the folder. You'd do that? Destroy her to get to him? I'd do what's necessary for family. Victor's face softened. I'm not the villain here. I'm trying to help. Your father made hard choices because he understood what mattered. I'm asking you to be that smart. My father let his daughter die. Your father saved an empire that employs 30,000 people, that funds research saving lives every day. That will outlast all of us. Victor stepped closer. One life, Stellan, one sacrifice, for thousands of others. The math isn't hard. It's not math. It was Alara. It was both. No apology in his voice. And one day you'll face the same choice. Your son's comfort or his destiny. His happiness or his legacy. You'll have to decide what matters more. He matters more, not what he represents, not what he could be. Him? Victor studied him for a long moment. Then you're going to lose him. Because people like us, people with power and history and blood that carries weight, we don't get to choose comfort. We have obligations. Not anymore. You think you can walk away? Victor laughed. You think you can build clean money on top of dirty foundations and pretend the soil doesn't matter? You're a Moreau. That doesn't wash off. Stellan's hands curled into fists. Get off my property. Tuesday, Seattle, bring the boy. Victor turned toward the car, paused. Or I file for emergency custody Wednesday morning. And I promise you, when the judge sees your financial history next to our family resources, when they see Sarin's record next to our stability, you'll lose. Maybe, but you'll lose too. Victor raised an eyebrow. How? Because I'll expose everything. Every falsified trial, every buried adverse reaction, every death my father's lies caused. Stellan's voice was steel. I'll burn it all down. The patents, the reputation, the empire, all of it. You'd destroy yourself. Yes. You'd go to prison, lose your company, lose your son anyway. Maybe, but at least he'd grow up knowing I tried, knowing I chose him over legacy. Stellan stepped forward. Can you say the same? Did Alara die knowing you chose the empire over her? For the first time, Victor's composure cracked. You self-righteous. You have no idea what you're talking about. Then tell me I'm wrong. Tell me you didn't let a 14-year-old die to protect pharmaceutical fraud. Silence. Victor's face hardened back into marble. Tuesday, he said quietly. Or this becomes a war you can't win. He got in the car. It pulled away, leaving Stellan alone in the driveway, shaking with rage and fear and something that felt like grief. That afternoon, Caspian came home from the park. Stellan, why do you look sad? He forced a smile. Just tired, buddy. Marie said people come to talk to you and make you sad. She said they're not very nice. Marie talks too much. Is someone trying to take me away? The question stopped Stellan's heart. What? No. Why would you think that? I heard you on the phone. You said my name. You sounded scared. Caspian's eyes were too knowing. Are you scared? Stellan knelt down, eye level with his son. Yeah, sometimes I'm scared. Of what? Of not being good enough. Of making mistakes. Of... He stopped, started over. Of losing you. Why would you lose me? Because sometimes the world is complicated, and people who want to help actually make things worse, and... He couldn't finish. Caspian put small hands on either side of Stellan's face. Mom says when we're scared, we just have to be brave for 5 seconds. That's all. Just 5 seconds of brave, and then we can be scared again. Stellan's vision blurred. Your mom is very smart. I know. Caspian dropped his hands. So you should be brave, and I'll be brave too, and we'll figure it out. Yeah? Yeah. That's what families do. And standing there in his vast, empty house that suddenly felt less empty, Stellan made a decision. He was done protecting the lie. He was done choosing legacy over love. Whatever it cost, he'd pay it. 30 days. Sarin walked out of the facility on a Wednesday morning, carrying the same small bag she'd walked in with, and wearing sobriety like new skin. Uncomfortable but real. Ramona waited in the parking lot, leaning against her car, arms crossed. You look different. I am different. Good different? I don't know yet. Sarin threw the bag in the back seat. Ask me again in 6 months. Fair enough. Ramona got in the driver's seat. You ready? No, but I'm going anyway. The drive to Stellan's house took 20 minutes. 20 minutes of Sarin's heart trying to climb out of her chest. She'd talked to Caspian every day on the phone. Heard his voice, his stories, his easy acceptance of this new life with his father. But she hadn't seen him, hadn't held him, hadn't proven to herself that he was real and whole and still hers. The gates opened. The house rose ahead, glass and stone and intimidating wealth. She almost told Ramona to turn around. Then the front door opened and Caspian came running. Mommy! She was out of the car before it fully stopped, dropping to her knees as he crashed into her. Baby, oh my God, baby. He wrapped his arms around her neck, buried his face in her shoulder, and she held him like she'd never let go. You came back, he whispered. I told you. Nothing could keep me away. I know, but I was still scared. Me too. She pulled back, looked at his face. Healthy, happy, whole. But I'm here now. For real? Oh, for real. Stellan stood in the doorway, watching. He looked exhausted, older, like the month had aged him in ways time alone couldn't explain. Sarin met his eyes over Caspian's head. Thank you, she mouthed. He nodded. Just once. Inside, Caspian pulled her by the hand, showing her everything. The shelf he and Stellan built for the rock collection. The room that was his, with its view of the garden. The kitchen, where Marie made pancakes shaped like animals. And look, he dragged her to Stellan's study, pointed at the desk. That's the rock I gave him. He kept it right there. He said it helps him remember. Sarin looked at the smooth black stone, sitting next to Stellan's laptop like a talisman. Stellan stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets. He's been waiting for you, he said quietly. I can tell. We both have. The admission hung in the air between them. Caspian, oblivious, pulled at her hand. Can we go to the park? I want to show you the ducks. Sure, baby. Give me 5 minutes to talk to Stellan, okay? Okay, but don't take too long. He ran off, leaving them alone. The silence was heavy. You look good, Stellan said finally. Liar. I look like I just spent 30 days in rehab. Okay. You look tired, but good. She managed a smile. How is he, really? Good. He's amazing. Stellan's voice roughened. Smart and funny, and so much like you it hurts. He's like you too, the way he organizes things. The way he asks questions until he understands. She paused. He loves you. You know that, right? I'm starting to believe it. Good, because it's true. She took a breath. We need to talk. About your uncle. About what happens next. I know. He called the facility, somehow got through to my therapist, tried to get my records released. Stellan's jaw tightened. When? 2 weeks ago. They refused, but he's not going to stop. No, he's not. Stellan moved to his desk, picked up the black stone, turned it over in his hands. He wants Caspian in Seattle, Tuesday, for testing and integration. What did you tell him? I told him to go to hell. And he threatened to expose my financial history, prove I embezzled from family accounts to start my business, take everything. He set the stone down. And he'll use your record too, paint us both as unfit, then swoop in with the family's perfect stability and unlimited resources. Sarin felt sick. So, what do? We fight. He looked at her. Together. Like you said. How? I'm going to expose everything. The fraud, the falsified trials, what they did to Ilara. His voice was steady. I'm going to burn the empire down. That'll destroy you too. I know you'll lose everything. Not everything. He met her eyes, not him. That's what matters. She stared at this man she'd run from, who was now willing to sacrifice everything to protect their son, and felt something crack open in her chest. "Then we do it together," she said. "Whatever it takes." "You sure? It's going to get ugly." "I'm sure." She moved closer. "I wrote you a letter, in rehab. I don't know if I'll ever give it to you, but I need you to know. I see it now. What I did, what it cost. Sarin, I'm not asking for forgiveness. Just, let me say this." She swallowed. "You were right. I should have stayed. I should have fought. And I'm sorry." He was quiet for a long time. Then, "I was scared too, when you told me. I didn't say it because I didn't know how, but I was terrified." "I know. I thought I'd become my father. Thought I'd have to choose between loving someone and protecting myself, and I'd make the wrong choice." He looked at Caspian's rock. "Turns out, I didn't have to choose. I just had to stay." "We both ran," Sarin said softly, "just in different directions." "Yeah. So, now we stay." "Yeah." He smiled, tired but real. "Now we stay." Outside, Caspian's voice called from the garden. "Mom, Stellan, come see, there's a crow." They looked at each other, and without words, moved toward the door together. Not fixed, not forgiven, but together, and for now, that was enough. Victor arrived at noon on Tuesday, not in Seattle, where he'd demanded they meet, in Portland. At Stellan's door, making a point, "I go where I want. I take what I want." Stellan watched from the window as the town car pulled through the gates, felt his chest tighten with something between rage and dread. Sarin stood beside him, arms crossed. "I thought you told him no." "I did." He doesn't seem like someone who hears that word often." "He's not." The doorbell rang. Once, twice, insistent. "Marie has Caspian upstairs," Stellan said. "He won't see him." "Are you sure about that?" "No." He turned toward the door. "But I'm going to try." Victor stood on the threshold like a king surveying conquered territory. "Stellan, you look unwell. You weren't invited. I gave you a deadline. You missed it. So here I am." His gaze shifted to Sarin. "And you must be the mother. How charming." Sarin's voice was ice. "Get off this property." Victor smiled. "I have every right to be here. Family business. Speaking of which..." He looked past them, into the house. "Where's my grandnephew?" "Nowhere you can reach him," Stellan said. "That's not how this works." "Then let me explain how it works." Stellan stepped forward, blocking the doorway. "You don't come into my home, you don't meet my son, and you sure as hell don't threaten us and expect compliance." Victor's expression hardened. "I tried to be reasonable. I offered you a partnership, integration with benefits." He pulled his phone from his pocket. "Since you've refused, I've taken other measures. As of this morning, emergency custody motions have been filed in family court, citing both your financial irregularities and Ms. Castwell's recent rehabilitation as evidence of parental unfitness." Sarin went pale. "You can't." "I can, and I have." Victor's smile was a blade. "The hearing is Friday. I expect you'll both want to retain counsel. Though I should warn you, most of the good family law attorneys in Portland are already on retainer with firms friendly to Moreau interests." "You bastard," Sarin breathed. "I'm pragmatic. There's a difference." He looked at Stellan. "This is your last chance. Agree to supervised integration, allow family oversight, and the motions disappear. Fight me, and I'll destroy you both." "You'll destroy yourself too." "Will I?" Victor's eyebrow rose. "I'm 83 years old. What do I care about scandal at this point? My legacy is secure. Yours," he gestured vaguely, "not so much." Stellan felt the trap closing. Then, from behind him, a voice he didn't expect. "Actually, I think you care quite a lot." Sarin moved forward, phone in hand. Victor's gaze sharpened. "Excuse me?" "I've been working with some people, journalists, investigators." Her voice was steady. 30 days is a long time. especially when you're sober and focused and very, very motivated. What are you talking about? She held up the phone. I'm talking about your niece, Elara Moreau, 14 years old, died of leukemia in 2004. Her eyes were hard. Except she didn't have to die, did she? Victor's face went still. You have no idea. I have medical records, trial data, emails between your brother and the FDA that were supposed to be destroyed but weren't. She stepped closer. I have everything, and it's all ready to publish. Stellan stared at her. What? I told you, I'm done running. She didn't look away from Victor. You let her die to cover up pharmaceutical fraud, clinical trials with falsified data, drugs approved based on lies that killed people, and when your niece needed the one treatment that could save her, you refused because it would expose everything. Victor's composure cracked, just slightly. You're bluffing. Am the first? She tapped her phone. The article goes live in 6 hours. Unless you withdraw the custody motions, immediately. If you publish that, you'll destroy Stellan too. He used family money to build his empire. He's complicit. Actually, Stellan said quietly, I'm not. He pulled a folder from the hall table, handed it to Victor. That's a full accounting of every dollar I took, every transaction traced and documented, along with bank transfers showing full repayment with interest completed last week. His voice was steel. I'm clean. Finally, completely. Victor opened the folder, scanned the pages, and something shifted in his face. You're insane. You've bankrupted yourself. No, I've freed myself. Stellan felt the weight lift. I don't owe the family anything anymore. Not money, not loyalty, not my son. You'll still lose everything. Your company is worth less than his future. So yes, I'll lose it. I'll lose the house and the reputation and everything I built. He stepped beside Sarin, shoulder to shoulder. But I'll keep him, and that's what matters. Victor stared at them both, and for the first time he looked old, not powerful, not untouchable, just old. You're willing to burn it all down, he said slowly. Everything, just to keep one child from his rightful place. He's not a place, Sarin said. He's a person, and he's ours. You're making a mistake. Maybe. Stellan's voice was calm. But it's our mistake to make. Silence stretched. Then Victor did something unexpected. He laughed, bitter and tired and strangely sad. You remind me of her, you know. Elara. She was stubborn too, believed in right and wrong like they were absolute. He closed the folder. She would have liked this, watching you choose differently than we did. Stellan's throat tightened. Then withdraw the motions. And if I don't? Then the article publishes, the empire falls, and you spend what's left of your life watching everything your brother built turn to ash. Victor studied him for a long moment. He was wrong, you know, your father, about the choice he made. I know. I was wrong too for supporting it. I know that too. But I can't undo it, can't bring her back. Victor's voice roughened. All I can do is make sure the family continues. Make sure the name means something. It already means something, Sarin said softly. It means the people who carry it chose love over legacy. Chose people over power. That's a better inheritance than money. Victor looked at her. Something unreadable in his face. Then he pulled out his phone, made a call. Withdraw the motions, all of them. Effective immediately. A pause. Because I said so. That's why. He ended the call. There. It's done. Stellan didn't move. Just like that? Just like that. Victor pocketed his phone. I'm old. I'm tired. And maybe it's time to let the past die. What about the article? Victor looked at Sarin. If you publish, you publish. I won't stop you. But know this, it won't just destroy me. It'll destroy every person who depends on Moreau companies for employment, for medication, for research funding. His voice was quiet. You want to punish the guilty? Fine. But count the innocent first. It was a good move. A final card played with precision. Sarin met Stellan's eyes. He gave the smallest nod. Her choice. She looked at Victor. The article doesn't publish, but if you ever come near my son again, it goes live, along with everything else we find. Do you understand? Perfectly. Good. She stepped back. Now get out. Victor walked to his car, paused with his hand on the door. For what it's worth, he looks like her. Your son, in the photos I saw. His voice was distant. She would have loved him. Then he was gone. Inside, Stellan and Sarin stood in the hallway, shaking with adrenaline and relief, and the slow realization of what they'd just done. Did that really just happen? Sarin whispered, I think so. Are we safe? For now. He looked at her. You had all that? The records, the journalists, all of it? Most of it. Some of it was bluff. She managed a weak smile. But he didn't know that. You're terrifying. I'm motivated. There's a difference. A sound from upstairs. Caspian's voice, asking Marie if he could come down yet. They looked at each other. Together? Stellan asked. Together, Sarin agreed. And they went to tell their son he was safe. 3 months later, the courtroom was smaller than Sarin expected. Less dramatic. Just a judge's chambers, really, with wood paneling and fluorescent lights and a clerk taking notes. Judge Morrison, 50s, reading glasses perched on her nose, reviewed the final documents. Shared custody, alternating weeks with flexibility for the child's needs. She looked up. Is this acceptable to both parties? Yes, Your Honor, Stellan said. Yes, Sarin echoed. And the DUI charge has been formally expunged from Ms. Castwell's record, based on new evidence provided by the Portland Police Department. Correct, Your Honor. The arresting officer's report contained significant errors. The judge made a note. And Mr. Moreau's financial standing has been verified as legitimate and separate from family trust obligations. Also correct. Well then. Judge Morrison signed the documents with a flourish. Custody is granted as proposed. Shared legal and physical custody, with both parents maintaining equal rights and responsibilities. She looked at them over her glasses. I hope you both understand how fortunate you are. These cases usually end very differently. We do, Your Honor, Sarin said quietly. Good. Then I wish you and your son all the best. A small smile. Court is adjourned. Outside, in the courthouse hallway, Sarin let out a breath she'd been holding for months. It's over. It's over, Stellan agreed. We did it. Yeah, we did. They stood there awkwardly, two people who'd been through a war together, but didn't quite know how to be at peace. So what now? Sarin asked. Now we figure out how to co-parent without killing each other. That's a low bar. I'm setting realistic expectations. She laughed, surprised and genuine. Fair enough. That night, in Stellan's house that felt less empty now, they sat Caspian down. He'd been patient, waiting, while adults did adult things that involved courtrooms and lawyers and conversations behind closed doors. Now he looked between them, wary. Am I in trouble? No, baby, Sarin said. Not at all. Then what? Stellan glanced at Sarin. She nodded. We need to tell you something. About me. About who I am. Caspian tilted his head, waiting. You know how you asked if I was going to stay? If I'd be here for a really long time? Yeah, I meant it. Because... Stellan's voice caught. Because I'm not just a friend of your mom's. I'm your father. Silence. Caspian blinked. My dad didn't die? No, baby. Sarin's eyes were wet. I lied to you. I was scared, and I made a mistake, and I told you he was gone when he wasn't. So you're my dad? Caspian looked at Stellan. For real? For real. How come you didn't come find me before? Because I didn't know about you. Your mom left before she could tell me. Stellan leaned forward, but I would have. If I'd known, I would have come, I promise. Caspian processed this. his 7-year-old brain working through complexities adults struggled with. Are you mad at Mom? For lying? I was, for a while. But not anymore. How come? Because being mad doesn't help, and because we're trying to do better now. So you're staying? Both of you? Both of us, Sarin confirmed. Different houses, but both here. Always. Caspian was quiet for a long moment. Then, can I still call you Stellan? Or do I have to say Dad? Stellan's breath caught. You can call me whatever feels right. What if nothing feels right yet? Then we wait until something does. Okay. Caspian stood, walked to the window where his rock collection sat, picked up the geode, the one that looked normal outside but held treasure within. I'm glad you're my dad, even if it's confusing. Yeah? Yeah. You're good at building shelves, and you don't get mad when I wake up scared. Stellan couldn't speak past the lump in his throat. Sarin answered for him. He's glad too, baby. I know. I can tell. Caspian set the geode back in place. Can we have dinner now? I'm hungry. And just like that, the moment passed. Not resolved exactly, but accepted. The way children accept truths adults complicate. Later, after Caspian was asleep, Sarin and Stellan sat in the kitchen with coffee neither of them drank. He took that better than expected. Sarin said, kids are resilient. Or, we got lucky. Maybe both. Stellan turned his cup in circles. I don't know if I can forgive you. Not completely, not yet. Oh, I know. But I understand why you ran, and I'm trying. That has to be enough. It is enough. Oh, she met his eyes. I don't know if I can forgive myself either. But I'm trying too. Then we're even. Not quite, but close enough. We weren't a fairy tale. We weren't even a love story. Not in the traditional sense. We were something harder. Two people who had failed each other, choosing to do better for the person who needed us most. We had dinner together twice a week. Awkward at first, then easier. We traded weeks, Caspian going between homes like a small diplomat negotiating peace. We learned to text without subtext, to co-parent without competing, to exist in the same space without the weight of everything we'd lost crushing us. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And slowly, carefully, we built something new on top of the wreckage. Not romance, not reconciliation, just family. The messy, complicated, beautiful kind. 6 months later, somewhere in Portland, Oregon, a 7-year-old boy sleeps in a room that's his. Not the room at his mother's apartment, small and cozy with glow in the dark stars on the ceiling. Not the room at his father's house, big and bright with a view of the garden. Both. He has 2 homes now, 2 bedrooms, 2 sets of clothes and toothbrushes and familiar smells. It confused him at first. Now he just calls it normal. His rock collection has grown. The shelf his father built holds specimens from 3 states, beach glass from the Oregon coast, fool's gold from a mining town in Montana, a chunk of obsidian from a volcano trip his mother researched for weeks. The geode still sits in the center, normal on the outside, treasure within. He thinks maybe that's like people. His mom told him once that everyone carries things you can't see, hurts and hopes and histories. He's starting to understand. Tonight, he's at his father's house. Tomorrow, his mother picks him up for her week. Next Saturday, they're all going to the coast together. All 3 of them. His mom's idea. His dad agreed. It'll probably be awkward. But Caspian doesn't mind awkward. Awkward means people are trying. And trying, his therapist says, because he has a therapist now, which seemed weird at first but actually helps, is the bravest thing you can do. Before bed, his father comes to his room. The routine is familiar now. 3 pats on the head, 2 on the shoulder, 1 on the hand. Good night, buddy. Good night, Dad. The word still feels new, but less strange than it did. His father pauses at the door. Love you. Love you too, all the way to the other side of space. A smile. That's pretty far. I know, that's the point. After the door closes, Caspian lies in the dark and thinks about the things he knows now that he didn't before. His father didn't die. His mother was scared. Fear makes people do things that don't make sense. But fear also makes people brave. His mom got brave enough to ask for help. His dad got brave enough to stay. And he got brave enough to love them both, even when it was complicated. The lesson, this story was never about a billionaire, or a hidden child, or a custody battle. It was about fear. The fear that makes us run when we should stay. The fear that makes us silent when we should speak. The fear that convinces us we're protecting the people we love when we're really just protecting ourselves. Sarin ran because she was afraid Stellan would break her son's heart. Stellan pulled away because he was afraid he'd destroy what he loved. And somewhere in between, a little boy grew up without knowing half of who he was. But here's what they learned, what I hope you'll carry with you. Fear is a terrible navigator. It will always point you toward escape. But love, real love, asks you to stay in the room when staying feels impossible. It asks you to trust when trust feels dangerous. It asks you to fight even when you might lose. Because the people we love deserve our courage, not our fear. Somewhere in Portland, Oregon, a 6-year-old boy sleeps in a room between his mother's apartment and his father's house. He has 2 homes now. 2 parents who show up. 2 people who chose him over their fear. And every night before bed, he tells them both, I love you all the way to the other side of space. And they believe him, because if anyone knows how far that is, it's them. Thank you for staying until the end of this story. If it touched something in you, hit that like button. If you know someone who needs to hear it, share it with them. And if you want more stories like this, stories about broken people finding their way back to each other, subscribe to Empire of Lies and Tum on notifications so you never miss an upload. I want to know, what's the lesson you're taking from Sarin and Stellan's story? What fear have you let drive your choices? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and your stories matter to me. Until next time. Remember, the bravest thing you can do is stay